Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. For those of you who are new here, my name is Bree. I am the writer and creator of the OT Latina blog, where I share tips and resources for students and practitioners. Today, I'll be sharing what it's really like to be a home health occupational therapist. I'll discuss things like my daily routine, the type of pay I receive, what type of equipment I use, and also what traits are required to be successful in this setting. Before we dive in, make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel. I post new videos every Friday. Also visit otlatina.com for free resources. Okay, let's get into it. First, we're going to talk about my daily routine. So, one of the biggest perks of being a home health occupational therapist is that I get to manage my own schedule. So, what that looks like in home health OT is you get a full caseload. If you don't already have one, you build a caseload, and then you get to pick and choose what hours you work essentially based on when you can see families and what times work best for them. You can also block off times that you don't want to work. So, for example, I don't want to see patients really early in the morning. So, I usually schedule my patients around 10 a.m. and then I'm done around 5 p.m. So there's usually a lot of flexibility in your schedule as a home health OT, depending on what company you work for, because I know that there are some companies who literally don't care how you manage your schedule as long as you see those patients. And then, of course, there's those weird home health companies that require you to see patients from like 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., which I would probably just avoid those companies whenever you're interviewing. Maybe that could be a question that you can ask. I personally prefer having the freedom to pick and choose when I want to work. And I can tell you right now, any company that wants you to see more than 30 visits per week is not a good company to work for. So if you're interested in home health, make sure to research the company. And whenever you're interviewing, just go ahead and ask them what their max number of visits are per week to be considered full time. As far as my daily routine, like I mentioned, I usually start around 10 a.m. and finish around 5:30 p.m. And in total, I probably see 4 to 6 patients per day. Now, I do know that there are therapists who like to push the number of visits they see per day. So I do see therapists who see up to like 7 or 8 patients per day. Personally, that's just a little bit too much for me. I prefer to have chill days and not overwhelm myself and wake up super early to try to squeeze in 8 patients per day. But like I said, if you're an early morning riser and you prefer to work really early and just finish early, that's something you can totally do in home health. So I am a pediatric OT. So it is a little different in the way that you manage your caseload because a lot of kids don't get out of school till like after 3 p.m. So you're kind of required to see kids in the afternoon. So yeah, just be aware that there might be some differences depending on whether you work in home health with pediatrics or adults. Okay, so next let's talk about cancels and makeups. Yes, it's going to happen, and I'm sure you've heard the stories, but if you work in home health, you are going to get cancels. Because it is more of an intimate setting, you're working in people's homes and you're entering their space. Sometimes families get sick, maybe they're not home, maybe they have appointments, so you're going to get those cancels. This is when scheduling could get a little tricky, but you still have the freedom to schedule them when you want. So, whenever a patient cancels, you try your best to reschedule them for a different day, but sometimes that's just not possible. If you're lucky enough to work somewhere where they offer telehealth, then that can also be an option. Personally, where I work, we do offer telehealth. So, whenever I get someone who cancels, I usually offer them a telehealth session, maybe like the next day or later in the week, and it just makes it easier for me. And that way, they don't lose out on that visit because that also counts in therapy. And cancels obviously affect your pay depending on your pay model. So I guess that would be one con of home health occupational therapy, but it's also kind of a pro because whenever a patient cancels, I usually go take a coffee break and just chill at some coffee shop. So when I mentioned that home health is pretty flexible, this is kind of what I mean. You don't necessarily know whenever a patient's going to cancel. Sometimes they cancel the day before, sometimes they'll let you know far in advance, and other times they'll literally cancel like 10 minutes right before you get to their home. And so you really have to learn to adapt and just ebb and flow with the motions. Honestly, sometimes when a patient cancels, it's for the best because you're trying to catch up on paperwork and documentation. So usually it works out. Okay, now that we talked about cancels and how they may impact your pay, let's talk about pay models and structures. So this may vary by company, but there are usually two pay structures they follow. The first one is a pay per visit model, and the other is a salary. So pay per visit means that you get paid a fixed certain amount for each visit that you complete. So for example, if you get paid $70 per visit and you see 5 visits per day, that is $350 per day. Okay, so I wrote this down because I cannot do the math in my head, but $350 per day, if you see 5 patients for 5 days a week, that is a total of $1,750 per week. And again, these numbers vary, but typically home health pay per visit is a lot higher than your standard visit pay if, let's say, if you're working in a clinic or a hospital. Ever since I transitioned into home health, I have been making way more money than I ever did working in a hospital. Just to give some context, when I started working in a hospital, I was making $72,000 per year salary. Specifically in pediatric home health, I have made up to $92,000 per year. Let's just say I've been a lot happier with the home health pay versus working in a hospital. Okay, so per visit is a lot more complicated than just saying per visit pay. So per visit rate pay is usually paid out at a lot higher of a rate, but you also get paid even higher if you're doing evaluations. So for example, some of the offers that I've gotten, I would say they offer me $70 per visit, plus for each evaluation I complete, I get $80 per evaluation. That includes re-evaluations. So I live in Colorado. We do re-evaluations every 3 months. So every 3 months, my whole caseload gets a re-evaluation. And so if you're doing that many re-evaluations, you're getting paid that higher $80 rate. So let's just say when you see all the kids that you're supposed to, let's say you're seeing your 25 visits per week, all of that adds up quickly and you end up making so much money. The con of the per visit rate is that you do have cancels in home health. And so whenever you get a cancel, you do not get paid unless your company reimburses you for no-shows, which unfortunately a lot of companies do not do. But you always have the opportunity to make up that missed visit whenever you reschedule them. So it's definitely a give and take, but because you get to manage your own schedule and you kind of have that freedom, per visit isn't that bad. Okay, next let's talk about salary pay models. I personally prefer a salary pay model as a full-time home health OT. I'm just going to give an example of some offers I have received and taken and worked for in the past. So previously, I have been offered an $85K salary per year. On top of that, they would pay me $250 per month for a cell phone stipend, another $250 for my mileage, and then on top of that, for every coda that I supervised, I would also get paid $250 extra per month. So honestly, I prefer a salary pay model because you still have the flexibility to manage your own caseload, but whenever you get a cancel, you don't have to worry about losing out on that pay. However, I will say that companies that offer a salary pay model usually offer a little bit less. So for example, if you're working per visit, you can probably make up to like $100,000 to $120,000 per year. But on salary, they are never going to offer you $100,000 to $120,000 per year. So like I said, it's a give and take. Salary, the pro is that you still get paid regardless of cancels. Per visit, unfortunately, you lose out on that money if someone cancels, but there is so much earning potential there depending on how many patients you see. So yeah, those are the two common pay structures in home health therapy. I will add that a lot of companies don't initially offer you a salary option, but I have always been the type to ask during the interviews what their pay structures look like. And if they don't offer a salary option, I usually ask them, hey, I would like to work here, but I would need a salary option in order for me to be full-time here. A lot of companies usually budge if you just ask them, especially if you are their ideal hire. Okay, next we'll talk about how it is to work in your car. So as a home health OT, you are your own mobile clinic. So you carry all of your supplies. So because I am a pediatric OT, I carry a bunch of stuff. All of my toys, any peanut balls I have, any disinfecting equipment I have, it's all in my car. You even document in your car. So you really make your car your work office. So if you're going to go into home health OT, I would definitely recommend a reliable mode of transportation. I drive a Subaru Outback, and that has so much space compared to my previous vehicle. I was driving a little Ford Fiesta before, and it was so cramped in there, and I could not have any other passengers in there because I was full of toys and different equipment. So if you're really considering home health OT, just think about the type of car you drive and if you're willing to have it filled with a bunch of equipment and toys and supplies. As far as working in my car, you do a lot of documentation in your vehicle. So while you're out on the road visiting homes or out in the community, whenever you have a cancel or whenever you have a break, I usually like to complete my soap notes or finish some evals while I'm in my car. So something that's really useful that I use personally is the steering wheel tray. I will post it right here, but it has been so helpful for me to have something that I can put my laptop on and just type away. So yeah, that's one tool that I find really helpful if you're going to be documenting in your car. As far as storage in your vehicle, you do have to get creative. So I use a trunk organizer in the back of my Subaru to help me kind of organize all my toys and equipment. As far as equipment that you use, a lot of companies do provide you a stipend to purchase materials and supplies. Some companies don't give you a stipend, so you have to go out and buy your own supplies and equipment with your own money. But either way, you kind of get creative in how you're going to purchase things, what types of things you're going to purchase that have multiple uses, and how you're going to store them. So as a home health OT, just keep in mind a lot of your time is spent out on the road, out in the community. But like I mentioned previously, you still have a lot of flexibility in your schedule. So for example, I had 2 cancels this morning, so this is why I am able to film this video right now. I'm also going to be able to make myself a quick lunch in my own kitchen instead of going out to eat. So yeah, just lots of flexibility there. Okay, very last thing, I just want to talk about some of the traits that you need to succeed in this setting. I just want to say that home health is not for everyone. It definitely takes a certain type of personality to be able to adjust and adapt to this setting. I know a lot of professors and other OTs discourage new grads from entering a home health setting. And unfortunately for me, that did work when I was first graduating. I wanted to go into home health, but I was discouraged by a lot of my professors because they said that I wouldn't have the mentorship that I needed. And so I went straight to working in a hospital, and honestly, I loved it, but I did not like being stuck in a building for 8 hours a day. And so after the hospital setting and I got my foot into home health, I realized how much I loved it, and I realized how much I loved being independent. So that is one trait you will definitely need if you want to work in home health. You have to be hyper independent. And the reason for that is because you manage your own schedule, you manage your own documentation, you manage your own routes to different patients' homes, and you don't have people to bounce ideas off of because you're out on the road by yourself. Which brings me to my next trait. You definitely have to be someone who's super creative and loves to problem solve. So because you don't have access to equipment like in a traditional outpatient or hospital setting, you have to get creative on the types of tools you use and how you're going to use them. A lot of the tools that I purchase and buy have multiple uses so that I can use them with multiple patients. So I remember when I first started in home health, I would do my patient chart review, and then I would have an idea in my head of what types of activities I would do. And then once I stepped into the home and I realized, okay, they don't have the equipment that I need. And then I didn't bring the equipment that maybe would have been beneficial for them during this session. So what am I going to do now? How am I going to do these activities? That is where you get creative and you start to problem solve using the things that you have available around you. That is one thing that I struggled with for a little bit when I first started in home health, but as you continue, you start gaining those skills that you need in order to be a really great problem solver and in order to get super creative. Okay, this brings me to my next trait. you have to be flexible and adaptable in home health OT. This is because this is not like your traditional setting where you clock in somewhere and clock out and you're done with your day. In home health, like I said, you get cancels, you have to do reschedules, you have to manage your own documentation. You get really good at time management because if you're not driving, then you're at a patient's home. If you're not at a patient's home, then you're probably driving. And then any little gaps of time that you get super good at figuring out like, okay, at this time, I'm going to finish these 3 notes. Okay, at this time, I'm going to finish this eval. Okay, at this time, I'm going to call these families to confirm a few things. So it's not just a set schedule. This is happening all day at different times. Sometimes you're in a session and you're getting a phone call from a parent or a family or a patient. So in OT, you generally have to be flexible and adaptable, but in home health, because you have different added elements now, you have to be extra adaptable and flexible. So yeah, just to recap the traits that I think are necessary to succeed in home health would be you have to be hyper independent, you have to be really creative and a good problem solver, and you have to be flexible and adaptable. Anyways, I love home health. I definitely have found the area where I just thrive in. So I just want to review the things that I personally really love about being a home health OT. One is I get to be super independent. 2, I get to manage my own schedule. 3, I am compensated very well for my time. And 4, I get to be extra creative. So yeah, if you're thinking about going into home health, I hope this video gave you a really good idea of what it's like to be a home health OT. Again, this setting probably isn't for everyone, but it is super fun and I really love working in this setting. I think it's the best setting that I've ever been in. I feel so much less stressed working as a home health OT versus when I worked in a hospital. So if this sounds like a setting that is good for you, make sure to let me know in the comments what you think. Also, let me know if you have any other questions regarding home health OT. Again, thank you guys so much for watching. I post new videos every Friday, and I will be posting more videos on activities and equipment I use as a home health OT. Thanks for watching. Bye, guys.